All right. I guess I'm on, huh? Okay, good. Well, you notice in the title of the sermon today that it's not necessarily my favorite month that I'm going to talk about, or at least start off with, but it's about my favorite name for a month. And my favorite name for a month is the month January. Now, I don't like January that much. I mean, it's cold and drizzly here in Indiana, but I love the name January. In fact, I think all the months should be named January. You know, first January, second January, whatever, because January is so important to me in terms of its concept and its meaning. It comes from the name of the Roman god Janus. And the Roman god Janus was the god of beginnings and endings, the god of transitions, doorways, and thresholds, the god of passages. He's usually depicted as having two faces, since he looks to the future and he looks to the past. And as a god of transitions, he had functions that pertain to birth and to journeys. Janus frequently symbolized change and transitions, such as the progress of the past to the future, from one condition to another, from one vision to another. And so January, then, for me, the name represents this idea of change, looking to the past, learning from the past, assessing the past, but seeing us moving forward into the future. My mother is Japanese, and in the days prior to New Year's Day, she would clean the house, put away things that hadn't been put away. She prepared for the new year, a new beginning by cleansing away or cleansing out the things of the past. So I've thought a lot about change, and change has been an important and permeating part of my life, both my own personal changes and as a person who has made a living encouraging other people to change. I was in sales, so I encouraged people who were using one thing to use another and to change. I was a sales manager, and then I was a trainer, so I tried to get people to think about things differently. I promoted change as I was a minister, and now as a hospice provider, spiritual life counselor, working with the dying and the bereaved. I often have to deal with change. I've made changes in the works that I've chosen. I've made changes in the careers I've chosen. I've moved more times than I can count. I've changed my marital status and I've changed religions and on and on. But why do people make changes? Some of us enjoy changing things, changing something up, while others find any kind of change frightening or foreboding. But often we are forced to make changes in our lives. Maybe we've had a job loss. Maybe a company that we work for goes out of business. Or maybe we, as proprietors of a company, can no longer maintain that company. Could be the death of a spouse or a loved one that forces us to make changes. It could be social upheavals, perhaps like what we're experiencing in a sense now. It could be pandemics that force us to think about our lives past and look forward to a change to be ready for the life to come. It could be a negative change in our physical health or a physical limitation that causes us to think about change. And there are times when we just feel that we need to change for our own well-being or for the well-being of others that we care for. Maybe we find ourselves in a dead-end job. We just can't stand going to work every day, and we think we need to change. Maybe we're in a relationship with someone and it just doesn't seem right. Something's wrong. Something needs to change. Maybe we feel like we've lost touch with who we are and who we are in life. Or an aspect of our life is withering away and you know that something has got to change. Whatever the reason, there are times when we realize and come to the understanding that we need to change. we need to change something. Now, when I think about change and the process of change, I think of something that I like very much. This is a picture of one of the kind of pies that my mother-in-law does marvelously fixing. That's a pecan pie. It's probably my favorite. Right next to chocolate, lemon meringue, and apple. And she can do all of those. The process of change to me has a lot to do with a pie. I mean, her pies are amazing. But a pie as a concept drives me to think about the process, or represents for me the process of change. Because I'd love to be able to eat that whole pie in one setting. And I think at times I could. If I hadn't eaten for a few days, maybe I could sit down and eat that whole pie. But the reality is I couldn't. And if I tried, I'd be sick. It wouldn't feel very good. After a while, I'd probably give up. I'd be stuffed and I couldn't move. I couldn't perform well in anything that I wanted to do because I've overdone it by trying to do everything at one time. But the process of change involves a pie. And here's what I mean. In order to not switch back and forth from the media to my presentation, I thought I'd write this out. Can you all see that? Is that correct? In your vision is the back. Okay, great. So I think of change, the concept of change, as I said, a pie. But the pie can't be eaten all at once. It has to be eaten in pieces. It has to be cut up into slices, and then it becomes more easily manageable and easy to eat. So when I think about the process of change, the process itself, it seems to me, is in 4 phases. The first process of change is the phase or aspect of assessment. We assess what the situation is now. And then we think about projecting, or what do we project into the future? What do we want our life to look like? Or what do we want the situation that needs to change? What do we want to look like? So in another way to think about this is to think about this as vision, to develop a vision for what the future is that we want. And then the third process is to identify what we have to do to move from the current assessed place or phase of our life into that projected vision of what we want to be. And we have to identify all those steps that we have to take. Things that we have to do, things that we have to stop doing, things that we have to acquire, things that we have to get rid of. And then finally, we have to execute that process. So for many of us, it's taking a day planner and plotting out the things that we want to do, getting down to the details. And this can be done in a very casual way, or it can be done in a very detailed and intense way. I mean, sometimes we just say things that indicate that we've gone through this process of a pie, even though we may not be aware of it. I was working in Bloomington one day a few months ago, and I went to a fast food restaurant. And I heard one of the workers there say to another one, this job sucks. I heard they're hiring at Arby's. I'm going to go there tomorrow. Well, that incorporated all those things. First of all was the assessment of the job, the projection or the vision that someplace else would be better, and then the process of determining what had to happen, going there tomorrow. Now it would be up to that person to do it, to fulfill that element. But you see how there is a process that we all take, or all can take, to affect change. But it's more than just simply saying, I'm going to do this now. It involves assessing, having a vision by projecting what we want that life to look like, or how we want that change to result. And then to identify the barriers that stand between what we are doing now and what we want to do, the present and the future that we hope for. And once we identify those barriers, identify the things that we need to do or to get, or the things that we need to stop doing or to eliminate, and then very carefully plan out and execute those things. So that's changed. Easy, right? Not really, because we even have to take that slice of pie and cut it down into small bite-sized pieces. And we can savor each piece, each bite of that pie, and enjoy it. So we have this, perhaps, a concept that something needs to change. The more thorough of an assessment we can make about what has to change in our lives, what's going on in our lives, assessing it deeply, thoroughly, and then thinking about what our vision is. And if you've ever gone to many therapists, or if you've gone to a career counselor like I did at one point in my life, a lot of what I did was to create a vision of what I wanted my life to look like. And then to figure out what I would have to do to get to that vision, to fulfill. And then to begin to put into my day planner, breaking down into its smallest bits, how or what I would have to do to finally achieve that vision. And by the way, that's a process that may happen several times in our lives, maybe over and over again, as we readjust, we rethink, and re-examine. But even still, when we think about our lives, well, that's a big thing. Just to say, I want to change my life. How do we do that? Well, as I said, we can break down that slice even more. And so the next, I was going to say slide, the next piece of paper I'm going to hold up is a way of looking at our lives in its component pieces. 7 particular aspects of our lives that we can look at. Now, this doesn't come from me. It comes from Father Justin Berlitz, who is at the Fatima Retreat House in Indianapolis. He wrote a book called Successful, Living. It's a small book, and if you want to just have a quick read of some very interesting thoughts about the process of living our lives and finding happiness and contentment in our lives, it's a great book to pick up. I know I just checked on Amazon the other day to see if it's available, and it is. And he's also done some more things with this concept of successful living. But what I got from that book was the way to look at life, breaking it down to 7 components. And so I'm going to show you what the 7 components are. And nicely, what he did is he used the letter F for each word so that we can kind of remember these 7 components. But he said then that when we look at our lives are segmented out into various aspects: family, finances, friends, faith, fitness. He kind of cheated here, formal and informal education, but couldn't find a synonym for education, formal and informal education. And then last but not least, fun. Okay, let me go through those. I may not have held that correctly. Family, finances, friends, faith, fitness, formal and informal education, and fun. So what I did is I've taken those 7 aspects of life, and I thought about applying a pie to those 7 aspects. Now, some of those things, they're not completely segmented, but they're often integrated. Family may have a lot to do with fun. Friends may have a lot to do with fun. Faith or spiritual life may have a lot to do with friends or with fitness. Whatever it is, there can be a coming together. But it's a good way to kind of outline what we want to think about when we're projecting as to how we want our lives to look like, or how we want to experience our lives. Say, for example, we could take the subject of fun. I can assess my life right now. I don't have a lot of fun. So what would my life look like? What would it look like if I felt that my life was fun, joyful, I was doing things that I wanted to do? Well, then I can list all those things. That's the assessment piece, the projection piece, and then I can identify, what do I have to do so that I could have more of what I could call, in a general sense, fun in my life? Well, several things I'd have to do. Stop working overtime. It may be drastic. Quit my job, get another one. Or it could be not sleeping in the morning. I mean, there could be a number of things. And then I begin to execute, begin to do the things that I said that I need to do. One big one and challenge for me is fitness. What am I doing now to be physically fit? And what would I like to be doing? So what's it going to take for me to get from where I am now to where I want to be? And then begin to get that little calendar out, the day planner out, or if you have an app, to-do list is a great app that you can use to kind of plot out your days, to make certain you're doing those things to move you towards that goal. I won't go through all of these, but you'll see how these kind of can be matched up with each other. For me, it's important that I have a strong faith life or a spiritual life, to get away from the 7 F's to a spiritual life. So for me, that has to do with meditation, daily mindfulness meditation, reading books that have to do with the development of my inner self, whatever that may mean, associating with people who build me up in a spiritual sense, who inspire me. We talk about sacred. So finding myself in a sacred place, appreciating or being aware of sacredness in where I find it, particularly in nature. So for me then, when I think about my life, I have to assess it, my spiritual life. What do I want my spiritual life to look like? What am I going to have to do to get there? What am I going to have to stop doing? It may mean that I have to get back to waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, doing my mindfulness meditation. Who knows? There could be a variety of things, but I have to begin to execute those things. Now, I know this is kind of a quick overview, and when I've talked about this in the past, I've done some classes with this, and we've had maybe an hour and a half to kind of go through this. But I encourage you to think about that, to think about how your life and the various aspects of your life fit into these 7 F's of family, finances, friends, faith, fitness, formal and informal education, and fun. For me in my life, there was a time when I wanted to engage in education. So I had to think about what was holding me back. And it took some very drastic measures to go back to school, to go back to college, to finish my undergraduate degree when I was 40 years old. That seems young to me now, but back then I felt like I'm an old man. What am I doing going back to school? But I had this vision of completing that education that I had abandoned when I was younger. The thing about it is, what I have found that Janus, the god of doors and thresholds, when we step over a threshold, often we find new doors that open up. That's kind of a saying that when one door closes, others open. And I found that is definitely true. So what I found was, when I went back and went through the door of going back and finishing my undergraduate degree, things opened up and eventually led to a master's degree, which I never thought that I would ever have in my life. Things happen when we begin to be true to ourselves. We begin to see ways or look at ways in which we can live our lives to the full. Be willing to make the changes that are necessary and needed so that we can live in a way that is authentic to who we are. So, up high, assess, project, identify, and then execute. Look at life in its 7 aspects: family, finances, friends, faith, fitness, your formal and informal education, and fun. So may you find joy and pleasure in your lives. May you make the changes that you need so that you can truly savor life to the full. And may you have fun as you continue to grow spiritually, physically, and in every possible way. Blessed be.